Hello, I'm Becher Townshend and welcome to Fontcast's bumper preview of tomorrow's big no-confidence showdown in State Parliament. And what an extraordinary past 2 weeks we've had since our last episode as freshly recommissioned Premier Jeremy Rockliff,
as predicted, Beach,
has pulled every lever he had to and perhaps a few he didn't to try and shore up his position ahead of tomorrow's no-confidence vote in Parliament. Bartlett gone.
Boned, I think you said, Beach, last week. Predicted.
That's
boned.
Abetz in as Treasurer.
Also, as predicted on this show.
Jench gone. Petrusma out injured.
Serious hammy, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Forestry gone. Greyhounds gone. And now Salmon gone. Jeremy's thrown everything overboard that isn't nailed down.
Well, except the stadium. That's somehow hanging in there.
As I think I saw Salmon's Dr. John Whittington, say yesterday, if you have a letter from the Premier professing support for your industry, you should be very afraid.
I got a Christmas card last year. Does that count?
Dear Brad,
nice knowing you.
Please return the card to sender. Meanwhile, Labor's Labor leader Dean Winter has been desperately trying to convince the Greens and the Indies to back him while bravely sticking to his principles.
Very stoic.
Yeah. For their part, most Tasmanians just wanted to sort it out, particularly the business sector who want this ridiculous extended period of caretaker to come to an end so the bureaucracy can get back to work.
Back to work?
Back to work. Well, that's what. Yep.
Generous. Yep.
Later in the show, we've also got exclusive EMRS poll numbers on what the voters think should actually happen tomorrow.
So stay tuned.
Okay, we've got the A team today to discuss the past 2 weeks and where to next. The Mercury's chief political reporter, David Killick.
Morning.
Veteran campaign Liberal strategist. Oh, no, just veteran campaign strategist. Yeah, Brad. You've lost the Liberal, mate.
Rebranding.
Brad Stansfield.
Plain label. Hello.
Hello. And the yin to Brad's yang, Alex AJ Johnston.
Is that a paying role? Or? Good morning, Beach.
Not at this stage. So, the final chapter of this inimitable 10-week election campaign started last Wednesday when Premier Jeremy Rockliff shot out to Government House just as soon as the ink was dry on the writs and got himself recommissioned. The Governor's only condition in reappointing Jeremy was that Parliament sit as soon as possible, so that's tomorrow, so that the Parliament could confirm or otherwise whether Jeremy did indeed have the numbers he claimed. Brad?
Yeah, well, Charles Woolley said in Saturday Mercury, and I do read Charles every week, he's often entertaining, if nothing else. He said that the Premier has played a blinder over the past 2 weeks, and I couldn't agree with Charles more on that one. After the weakest horribilis, I think I've made that up, which was the Mariners debacle.
Get in the car and drive it off the pier as quickly as you can.
The Libs wisely took our advice and reverted to campaign mode, and boy, hasn't it shown.
Absolutely.
So they grabbed the momentum from day one with the sacking, boning of Guy Barnett as Treasurer and appointment of Erica Betts. Yep. Then the next day they announced the appointment of Upper House Independent Tanya Rattray as leader in the Upper House.
Didn't you predict that some months ago, Brad?
I think I revealed it exclusively 3 months ago.
Why did it take so long to come to fruition, though?
Yeah, very good point. You've got a technicality there. Yeah.
They probably hadn't listened to that episode. They probably had to go back through and listen to it.
That's right.
Make it come true.
No, well, did the incoming leader have to stew on the decision? Or?
No, I think probably there was an election got in the way.
Yeah, I think the election sort of got in the way.
Fairness.
Yep.
But yes, it revealed here first, and then followed up with a clearly, I would say, well-planned and orchestrated rollout of policy announcements, concessions, backflips, call them what you will. So successful has the Premier been that according to the Fontcast Tote Board of Truth, Alex, we've now got the Libs as unbackable favourites?
Yeah, I'd say. I mean, about $1.05, I reckon, in the modern parlance. 24 hours is a long time in politics, but as you've just outlined, it's been a full court press from the Liberal side. So
what have you got there? Winter at 14, is that good odds?
Let's discuss whether he could even be a late scratching. I mean, the big question now is, do you continue with the no confidence motion based on what we've seen so far. So I'm sure we'll go over that in detail as the episode unfolds. But right now, he'd be a big outsider based on, exactly what you just said, Brad.
All right.
David, what do you make of it all so far?
Well, I miss the good old days when it was only Labor's policy positions that came as a surprise, when you couldn't really guess what they were going to do next. It's been a most extraordinary week. I think Friday was probably one of the most extraordinary days I've ever seen, because it appeared to me that we were setting up a position for exactly what happened over the course of the weekend with the salmon industry, where we had an announcement that we weren't really sure what it was about, but something was happening. But it just... this is a pretext. We expected something on, Greyhound sort of flagged the fact that the key issues of independence were going to be front and centre for the Libs, and I didn't see Salmon coming. That was clearly... I
think the Mercury editorial speculated that it might be coming.
Yeah, well, the possibility was I thought perhaps we might see something on the stadium, and I think we're going to come back to that, but certainly once Greyhounds came through, and then we started hearing talk about integrity and all this sort of thing, I thought, well, we're really playing to the agenda of the crossbench here. So I think that's been the story of the last week, has been the government really showing some flexibility and nimbleness where, again, we don't know what's happening in back rooms in the next 24 hours. As we know, in Tasmania, anything could happen, but, certainly, at least in public, the Libs have really, really played a blinder on this one.
Anything could happen, and it usually does. Let's unpack this one by one. AJ, what do you take of the Premier's announcement regarding salmon yesterday? What's your take on it?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised that salmon came up in the conversation, but I was surprised that I guess it sort of went as far as it did. Now, of course, it's a review, and we've seen plenty of reports and reviews in the past not amount to much, but I think this does put the magnifying glass on salmon, and I think the reaction from the industry shows that this is not just going through the motions. This will have serious consequences for them one way or another, and I think their anger was largely around that big change from the letter saying, and it was we've read the letter. It wasn't just we've got your back. It was gushing in its support for the salmon industry. Now that's a big departure to where we got to yesterday, and there were a few little, I guess, bones that were thrown to the crossbench, even a mention of looking at on land salmon farming, which is something the industry said is just impossible, but that's obviously something that Peter George has said a lot. So there are enough little clues, breadcrumbs, I guess, dropped into that those points of reference that sort of says this is not just your average sort of tick and flick. On the other two issues, well, forestry I thought was a bit of a non-event, because I think that policy was dead about 5 hours after they announced it in the 2024 campaign, when you've got the Forest Products Association panning it. Well, you're like, well, that's not going to go anywhere. So that didn't count for much, I didn't think. Greyhounds surprised me as well. In fact, on greyhounds, I was expecting something more like salmon, a review into animal welfare that could sort of set the path for a phase out. But no, they just went bang.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. You've got to remember how critical. I know they're two different issues, and there's an animal welfare component that isn't in pokies. But in terms of, the phase out, it was similar to what Labor did in 2014. Two issues that I don't think have a lot of broad community support. And I guess that's the other thing the Liberals have picked well. They've picked three issues that broadly the community has concerns about. Native forest logging. Your polling on the greyhounds shows that it's not overly loved. And I think people do have concerns about the salmon industry. Now, they don't not support it. Beach, I'm glad we got the YouTube, because your face is priceless. But I think, I talked to a lot of people yesterday who seemed to think that, well, a little health check on the salmon industry.
Little health check?
No. Sorry.
There's only so much you can throw out, AJ.
No. I'm saying that it goes much further than that. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. But the general sense that if we have a look at salmon, that's not politically disastrous, but it causes some headaches. And I'm sorry to ramble on, but it reminds me so much of the 2014 campaign, Brad, that I think you were a part of, where it just seemed like the Liberals were just trying to cross every box, try to stop every potential path for Labor victory. I was critical of the UTAS move, which of course they've gone back on now. But it was like I said before,
That was 2024, that one, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's what I mean. 2024. No, that's the election I mean, not the one just gone. I know they all run into each other.
Sort of blur.
But it was almost like, let's just stop every potential path for Labor. And I feel like that's what they've done this week. Tick, tick, tick. And the stadium is the only one that seems to be a sacred cow.
Just Killer, to round out, any further commentary on these three announcements?
Becher's got lots of notes here.
I've got lots of notes.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was interesting. The greyhounds, again, the pretext was interesting. I think the Premier spoke about, how distressed he was when he saw the Four Corners report. I can't actually even remember when that was. We've had plenty of time to address the issues of it. Well, my quick Google said 2015, but
it's about then.
It was more
the live baiting
recent
one.
That they've had 10 years to deal with these issues. Similarly, the issue in the salmon industry. We had an inquiry into the salmon industry in 2022, a parliamentary inquiry which made a bunch of recommendations. So, I feel in a way, particularly with salmon, it's a very token effort towards the crossbench that's caused real damage to the confidence of the industry. And I think the cost is greater than the potential benefit, except if you're trying desperately to hang on to power.
Yeah, on salmon, I mean, the Premier says, he put them on notice after the mass death, but then that letter comes after that. So if you're in the industry, you must be scratching your head. Well, were we on notice, or are you a huge supporter? And I think that's why the industry
And when did that notice end? When did they fail it?
Yeah, and...
Anyway, Beach,
well,
before you tee off, should just disclose that we have been re-engaged by Salmon Tasmania to assist them in their endeavours.
Yes.
Very, very recently, I should say.
Very recently, yeah. Look, I've got to say, I'm appalled by all this. I certainly understand the
just
politics.
salmon or all of it?
Well, the three announcements, I think.
Because you were ranting and raving about the Forestry one.
Yeah, I was. And I get the politics of it, and I get that this is a very aggressive grab for government to maintain power, and I certainly understand that. And crikey, they've been effective doing that. I can't dispute one word of that. But nuance from this whole process, this whole election has been missing. In an attempt to win the grey-haired crossbench of Greens and Independents, they have done nothing.
Grey-haired, you mean?
Yeah, they're predominantly grey-haired Independents and crossbench, and Greens crossbench. They're old people, is the point I'm making. Speaking as an old,
Byrne's got a bit of salt and pepper in the beard, but he's still pretty. You see him at Parkrun, he's
Dave,
doing pretty well.
Dave is probably the exception on this one, but the point I'm trying to make is that they are older members of the community. In the meantime, through this whole process, we've seen nothing done about cost of living, we've seen nothing done about health, we've seen nothing done about housing, and we've seen nothing done about education in this process the last week or so, to win the crossbench. They've just taken jobs from the timber industry, they've taken jobs from the greyhound industry, and now they're taking jobs from the salmon industry because, mark my words, this is a moratorium on the growth of the salmon industry. These things, health, education, cost of living and so on, these are the things that are attractive to 18 to 44-year-olds, right? The younger demographic, because they've got to have a future here in Tasmania, not a grim outlook that makes them want to move into state. Next on this list, from the crossbench, it'll be the stadium, it'll be integrity, and it'll be gambling. What they've done in this process is they have sold out business here in Tasmania. They have sold out the prospect of people investing in this state. Only on Friday I was with a client of mine looking at a doubling of capacity of his business, right? To which the salmon announcement just completely scuppered it. Full stop, is not going to occur. It's that real. It's exactly that. And if I was in industry, or if I was advising industry, and strangely enough I do from time to time, as you know, Brad, right? And that industry had a letter from the Premier making certain undertakings, and then within 4 weeks, that letter was 180 degrees turned around. I would be advising that business to not invest in this state, and it's that simple. And that's the implications of this process. So they may govern, good luck to them, but the reality is it's going to have significant impacts on the economy as we move forward.
On forestry, Do you agree, though, that it was unlikely they were ever going to go into that area?
I do agree that it was unlikely to get through Parliament, right? But this is a government that stands up and says it backs these industries. So if it stands up and says it backs these industries, and it says to the broad cross-section of the community, vote for us because we support these industries, and most people would vote for the major parties on that assumption that they do support these industries. To have them turn around and say, no, we don't support these industries, which is effectively what they're saying, then people who voted for those major parties have quite rightfully would feel let down.
What do you say to the Premier when he says the salmon industry should embrace this process? He said that last night.
I say to the Premier, you wrote a letter to the salmon industry providing them certain undertakings and basically saying you wouldn't bargain for office, and it's exactly what you've done. So I would say to the salmon industry, I would significantly question whether you can be confident that any discussion you have with this government is going to be followed through in a full and fulsome way.
What's your big fear? Oh, sorry, you go, Kim.
I think there's two things that are unnerving about this. One is we've got a government that's, pretty much marched in lockstep with the industry for as long as I can remember, has, possibly co-opted government agencies to defend it from all sorts of righteous scrutiny from the other side. So this change of pace, shooting seals in the face with beanbag rounds, come on.
Okay.
Anyway, there have been concerns raised about the industry for a long time. The government's been fiercely protective of the industry, so the change in tone is extraordinary. And the other thing that's quite confronting for someone who's covered this government for a long time is the sudden embrace of transparency. It's, suddenly there's some virus detected. I'm having a press conference on the lawns and telling crossbenchers it's most unnerving.
The fascinating thing about that was Peter George got to announce it on the radio. I mean, we are in a brave new world.
Very, very, all the old certainties are gone. I don't know where we stand anymore. Anyway.
All right.
Just quickly on that beach, though.
Yeah.
The mass mortality was shocking. No one liked that. And we've seen the situation in South Australia. Just playing devil's advocate, isn't there merit in having a look at how do we make sure the industry is protected, because the industry doesn't want mass deaths either.
Well, despite the claims of some, the industry faces a world's best practice regime of governance from a government point of view in terms of the EPA, the rules and regulations. So there are processes set up for industry to follow. So the simple reality of these situations is that, yes, it's unfortunate when you have a mass mortality event, just as it would be unfortunate if it occurred on a dairy farm or in an oyster farm, But the reality is there's processes that should be followed, and there's this constant inference that these processes don't work, that they don't occur. They do work, they do occur, and people are taken to task.
All right, let's not turn this into...
Oh, no, but
salmon.
It is very interesting. So what is the fear for the industry of this investigation? That it takes too long, that it comes up with hurdles they can't jump over? Like, where's the fear?
Well, the reality is, first things first, there's basically a moratorium.
Not basically, there is.
There is, okay. So you can't expand your industry. So if you're a business thinking of expanding, you can't.
Number one rule of business.
And am I right in saying...
Am I right in
saying that doesn't affect all the companies?
Well, all the companies would be looking at growth, right? Because that's what you do in business.
Well,
if you don't grow, you die.
That's right. And I read Peter George's wish list said, which seems to have been adopted mostly, that it was a cap on tonnage growth.
Yeah.
Now, that's not the same as a cap on new leases, for example. So, I mean, what is the situation here?
That's a cap on growth. So that's the first point. And the second point is a further review for further investigations into on land. I mean, seriously, this is a $1.3 billion industry that employs 5,000 people in Tasmania. And for governments to trade that away, they need to think very much about the consequences of it. Anyway, Brad.
Look, I would say, a few points from me. On the forestry one, and I was there in 2011 when that disgusting, dastardly deal was signed and put 10,000 people unemployed right around the state, particularly hurt places like Scottsdale, Darwin Valley, the Channel, in terms of the industry being shut down. So the back down on the 40,000 hectares being reopened was, I think it was a no-brainer, as you said, Alex. But for those that say, David Riley, that it's the death of the forest peace, or the finalisation of the peace deal, that's not right. That wood bank is still there to go and still potentially be reopened at some point. So just bear that in mind. It's not, they didn't abandon that forever.
Have we used it to bring down our carbon offsets yet? More than once? Well, look at this for us. We didn't like. We probably cashed in on that three or four times now.
Now, the greyhounds, I thought that was very, very clever. It was like a no-brainer the moment they announced it. Everyone went, oh, yeah, that's a no-brainer. Yeah. But, someone did think of it, and I thought it was very, very clever. It captured the moment. I think it captured the mood. The EMRS polling released last week supports that, but I think you could all say, talking around town, people mostly, apart from those people, that small group in the industry, are very supportive of that.
It did, however, create a what's next.
It did.
And I think that's when people started talking about, well, is salmon next? And then it was.
And that's right. And to my mind, I do agree, yes, notwithstanding we now work for them, I do think the announcement yesterday was a step too far. Put aside Premier writing, as I say, letters from the Premier don't count for anything anymore, but I do think it sends a very, very bad message about investment in Tasmania. We always hear about these three companies are foreign owned, right? They weren't foreign owned a few years ago, and I don't recall the antis cheering the industry on back then, for the record. But because they're foreign owned, that means their head offices are in other countries, and they look at investing money all around the world. And they will now look at their operations in Tasmania and go, well, we could invest more in Tasmania, improving our practices, investing, sharpening up our operations, or we could spend our money elsewhere. And I fear that is what is going to happen as a result of the moratorium and the uncertainty created by that announcement. And it won't just be in the salmon industry, Beach, as you said. That's the trouble. It will be across the board. People will be looking at Tasmania and saying it's not a safe place to do business. And we need foreign investment. We need investment from north of Bass Strait into this state. And, I think it was Robin Gray who said, Tasmanian cannot get by taking your own washing in. We have to have investment from outside. We have to trade outside of Tasmania. We can't just go round and round sort of, bartering, a piece of fish for a piece of salmon. It doesn't work that way, and I'm really, really fearful about what all that means.
Yeah, look, I've had my say. Dave, what's your thoughts?
I think we've covered it fairly well. What was missing for this is what has changed in the salmon industry between the period leading up to the federal election, when the government fiercely advocated for a carve out of the federal environment laws on behalf of the industry, to now, where we're using what I think is a fairly flimsy pretext to announce an inquiry, the outcome of which probably won't be particularly revolutionary, given that we've had, I seem to remember a Senate inquiry about 5 or 6 years back. We've had I think it was a select committee inquiry. We know what the issues are facing. I think Peter George would be more than happy to hand down his findings on the industry anytime the Premier cares to listen. I'm just puzzled at what has changed in the salmon industry between Christmas, the federal election, the state election, and now. And I
think we all know.
We do all know. There's a no confidence vote looming in the House of Assembly tomorrow.
Did they need the salmon announcement?
Well, I don't think they did. No. Thanks for prompting me there, Alex. I don't think they did. And my understanding is Labor were not going to go big in this space. For want of a better term, they were fiddling around the edges, perhaps having a look at some of the stuff that old mate from the northwest coast, whose name is
Craig Garland,
talked about in terms of a Marine Protection Act or whatever it's calling it. But that was it.
Yep.
Inquiry though is pretty much the minimum you can do. Short of actual action, we're going to tighten up some environment laws or what have you.
Imagine if the government announced they're going to have an inquiry into media ownership and operation in Tasmania.
Sure.
How that would be received down at your business. It sounds a bit benign from the outside, but really it's not.
The reality is it can have teeth.
How are they going to pick who does it?
Well, I don't know, but they have to come from the mainland, I think, don't they?
I would expect that Mr. George will have a veto on that.
Yeah.
That's, again...
Yeah. Well, that's it, because I look at the reports they did in the last Parliament. Saul Estlake is a very, middle-of-the-road politically person, but,
he
didn't make life easy for the government.
But he's not from the mainland.
No, I know. I'm not suggesting him. What I'm just saying, and then with Nicholas Gruen, they got a report that was very, very negative about the stadium. So it wasn't like it was a stitch up. So it'll be fascinating to see where they land on who does this report. That'll be hotly contested. Now, I hate to go on a history lesson, Brad, but I can't let your comment on the TFA go unchecked. Industry people signed up to the TFA because the markets were collapsing.
Well, no. Some industry people signed up to the TFA in return for ginormous checks.
Well, I think that's an unfair characterisation.
It's true, though.
The markets at the time were reacting very, very badly.
No, the TFA was a political deal.
Can I finish?
Okay, sorry.
We're reacting very badly to the environmental protests here. Brian Greene went to Japan, and people in Japan knew about our coops better than he did. And they didn't want wood from anywhere that was contentious. So something had to give. I think it's so simplistic to say, the TFA lost 10,000 jobs.
Well, it did.
There was a crisis to be addressed. Now, whether that was the right way to do it or not, anyway, that's a little bit of balance.
Forestry industry in Tasmania basically non-existent these days as a result of the TFA.
I think cottage industry is the word you're looking for, Brad.
Truth.
Anyhow, let's
one other thing
move
I just
on.
wanted to say, Beach, before we go on.
Yep.
Just on, I think we'll all agree that the Premier over these past couple of weeks has really, really, showed a level of operation which is vastly superior to to anything from the other bloke. Right. So I mean, I've said, and I heard this somewhere, I can't remember where, but I often think that most politicians have a very different public persona to their private persona. And when you think about it, Eric Abetz, but when you meet him, nicest bloke in the world.
Michael Field used to come across as a cuddly little teddy bear, and then I met him in the flesh, and sorry for this, Michael, but he was a grumpy little man.
So Jeremy, right, we had him in here at the start of the year, lovely bloke, sort of cuddles and patchouli flowers and all that sort of stuff. Absolutely, you think you couldn't find a nicer bloke, and he's pretty much betrayed that public image over the past 20 years. But I would say, particularly over the last couple of years, since he became Premier and then lost that majority, he has become the most ruthless Premier that Tasmania has had in my memory. Now, Beach should remember Jim Bacon better than me. Maybe he's up there with Jim Bacon.
Jim was ruthless, and so was Robin.
Okay, there you go. And Jeremy, absolutely ruthless. If you look at
in terms of being able to make a hard decision.
Well, no, if you look at doing what is necessary, crawling over that broken glass 3 times backwards, upside down, covered in salt, in order to keep that top job. So if you look at the list, I wrote a little list here. You have the Jeremy Rockliff bus. People that have gone under it: John Tucker, Laura Alexander, Lisa Archer. This goes on.
Yep.
Michael Ferguson.
Yep.
The constitutional precedent that you resign as Premier for using no-co, gone. Guy Barnett, the Treasurer, boned, as you said, Beach.
Yep.
Roger Yench, one of the Premier's closest allies for many, many years, punted out of Cabinet to make room for Bridget and Gavin. Forestry, we discussed, gone. Greyhounds, Salmon. All that the Premier has, and I think you're sort of hinting at it, David, all that has gone, or the Premier has been willing to lose those things in order to retain his job over the past 8 months. Now, look, I mean, it's one level it's admirable, politically certainly is. It's very, to my mind, when I think about it, very, 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 very Daniel Andrew-esque. The Victorian Premier who sort of, until his retirement, was very, very good at just pushing on no matter what. And I've got to say, as I say, Jeremy has certainly demonstrated a level of political ruthlessness that I think most people have not noted.
Yeah, well, have underscored, not to mention there's been a few others. I'm thinking of the former CEO of Macquarie Point at one point there. Anyhow,
right.
I hope you're not going anywhere near a bus stop soon, Brad.
Well, I catch the bus the morning, work most mornings, Beach, so yeah.
Well, for a long time, people were saying that Jeremy Rockliff's political career was coming to an end, will he contest the next election? And I used to push back on that because I never saw it. I always saw someone who was very much into it. And the times in recent history when there's been leadership positions up, he helped Peter Gutwin see off the challenge from Michael Ferguson, and then he saw off the challenge from Michael Ferguson himself. And Dean Winter, massively underrated Jeremy Rockliff's stubbornness when he moved the no confidence motion, thinking he'd fall on his sword.
Well,
Because
I think it's ruthlessness, actually.
Yes.
well, ruthlessness, stubbornness, passion, whatever it is, Jeremy Rockliff did not want to hand the premiership over to a Conservative person in the party. I think he's very proud of where he's put the Liberal Party. The events of the last few days aside, we can go over that. But I think he's proud that he's put the Liberal Party in a moderate position, and the Liberal Party here has had relative success compared to the Liberal Party federally because of that.
Yep.
So I think he massively underestimated Jeremy Rockliff's determination to keep that going.
Yeah, I certainly understand your point, AJ, and he's certainly gone down that path. But let's turn our attention to Dean Winter and Labor. David Dean scored a goal with the Ruth Forest coup, but that seems about it. What's Dean done wrong?
Well, look, I think just talking about the Ruth Forest thing for a moment, I think there were two sides to that. One, it was a bold policy initiative, and I think that's what people want to see. You know,
Bold or courageous?
Very, a bit of both. Ruth Forest is well respected in the Parliament, and you know, the flip side of that is, I guess, it's an admission that Labor didn't have within its own ranks someone who was up for the job, or an implication.
I don't read it like that.
Josh Willie had done a lot of work in that portfolio and was well across his brief. You know, perhaps not as spectacular as announcing someone from outside the party.
Well, even Saul Eslake thought it was a good idea. So
yeah, well, look, you know, certainly no disrespect in terms of either of them, but I think Labor's bet the house on the Greens looking across the chamber and saying, well, you know, we don't want 4 more years or 1 more year or however long it's going to be of the Liberals, and I think that's been a miscalculation. Labor's bet everything it has, not on adopting a nimble and adroit negotiating position when perhaps one was needed with a crossbench of various shades and hues, and they've just said, look, the raw maths on this is that we've got a progressive parliament, that we just can't see the Greens backing the Liberals in, and I think based on the political movements we've seen over the last week or so, I don't think the Greens are seeing it the same way.
No. AJ?
Well, I think that would have been true if the election result was different. If it was 12 seats all, I think the Greens wouldn't have taken much convincing to back Labor. But when the Greens have referenced this as well, when you only get 24% of the vote and you want to govern, you got to work for it. You got to work a bit.
What the Greens get?
No, well, the Greens can get, but you know what I'm
14,
saying. Like the Greens can read the election results as well, and know that the 40% of the population wanted the Liberals to govern compared to 24. That's got to count for something, and I think that's why the Greens set the bar higher this time around.
Didn't in 2010 or 1989.
No, but I wasn't. I was 4 in 1989, but you know, but even in 1989, the Labor vote improved, didn't it?
No, I think it went backwards. I have to check the record on that.
Well, anyway, we'll check the record on that.
No, I think it did go backwards.
But the fact that the Labor vote went backwards this time must have been in the Greens' mind, and so they set the bar higher. They wanted policy concessions. Now, some people have described the way Dean Winter's gone about it as admirable because he hasn't done what you've been very critical of the Liberals for today and traded things. He's tried to set a framework. Now, yesterday...
The Greens, Rosalie described him as stubborn. This is from the Greens.
Yeah. So yesterday, this framework comes out from Labor, which I thought was excellent. In having worked in the last Parliament,
Didn't get a single column centre manager.
That's the problem. It's come out very late in the piece. If it came out 10 days ago, maybe it would have had more of an impact. But I urge people to read it because I think it's full of really good ideas. Some that, if the Liberals, and I think they will end up continuing to govern, should adopt. Having worked in the last Parliament, some of the ideas Labor are putting forward about collaboration, open communication, no surprises, even the idea to have Ella Haddad as the Special Minister of State, I think it's a silly name, but I don't know what you'd call it. But to pick someone to have that role with the crossbench, I think is important. So it's a good document. I don't think it's going to change what's going to happen tomorrow, but it does deserve credit.
Right, Brad.
Yeah, look, it's given me terrible flashbacks of 2010. When I was working a very new employee, I was just a media advisor for Will back in 2010 after that election, which did result in 10-5 in a 25-seat parliament. Our vote improved from memory, maybe 6 or 7%. Labor voted Fallen by 12%. They lost 4 seats. We won 3. Bartlett said, I won't do a deal with the devil, so deal with my soul, or whatever it is. And then said he would resign. Sorry, David, bad impersonation. He said he'd resign as...
Wasn't that bad, actually.
He said he'd resign as Premier if the Libs got more seats or more votes, which we did. And then when push came to shove, we were completely outplayed.
Yep.
And we had, in hindsight,
Yeah.
no real idea what we were doing.
I've gone for a cycle ride. I've had
I'm just looking out the window. It's a glorious day in Hobart. We all think we know which way the wind's blowing, and at this exact moment, someone's taken a bike off the back of the car up at the pipeline track.
That's exactly right.
An inexperienced opposition leader. He was experienced by that time, but politically relatively inexperienced compared to the Bartlett, who was the Premier. People around that were much less inexperienced in this than. Labor had people who had been there in '89, etc., etc. Knew what was
I
going
think
on.
Michael Polly
would have been one.
Would have been
Exactly.
one with and he had the speakership, so I think he would have been encouraging them to stay, in power, and he's a very shrewd operator.
More than encouraging them, he would have been leading the charge.
So we just didn't know what we didn't know, and got completely outplayed. And I think the same has happened here with Dean and Labor, a bit like election campaign, actually. But the other point I would make is that at least the one thing that Will did, with the exception of one phone call he made, was that he said he wouldn't deal with the Greens, and he didn't deal with the Greens, and he didn't, and everyone knew that therefore there was no way he could form government, right? There was no attempt to sort of not deal but try and form government at the same time. Whereas what Labor's been doing is saying we're not going to deal with the Greens, but we're still going to try and form government, and so they've had a foot in both camps, and their messaging about principled and standing up for the right thing and not selling out their values or their promises has been confused, because everyone said, well, of course you need the Greens to form government, mate, so you can't have your cake and eat it in two. I think that's been the problem.
But Will Hodgman did want to govern.
Yeah, but on the basis that it was essentially handed over, which Bartlett then didn't do. There wasn't an attempt, and like what Labor's been saying, to try and form government by talking to people, doing deals, etc., or not doing deals, as the case may be. I just think, and look, Will got a lot of criticism at the time. I remember it. It was visceral criticism. I remember one day dropping one of my kids off at Sandy Bay infant school, and some random saying, if isn't Will, doing a deal with the Greens? It was very, very strong. And the same is happening now with Dean, I think. But after the fact, clearly as time went on, it turned out to be the smartest political decision of the past 25 years. And I just think Dean thinks he's doing that this time, but the messaging is confused by the way he's got a foot in both camps.
Yeah, look, I'm a bit more glass half full in terms of Dean, as you probably know, and most people listening to this show would know. I mean, the Labor have simply been caught by the Liberal machine. It's simply much more effective, much more ruthless in terms of what it wants to achieve, and they've been unable to even come close. That they haven't even really scratched the surface. And while they were thinking that they were in with a chance, I think their goose was pretty well cooked by early to middle last week.
Well, I think it was all over after the Greyhound announcement.
Yeah. I think the Greyhound captured the moment. I think it was the right thing at the right point. That's for sure. So, I mean, there was definitely a lack of political experience, but I also think they have a very risk-averse caucus. I think they don't want to get things wrong. They're very concerned. They're not willing to have a go at some times, but they have, to their credit, shown that they stand for what they believe in, and I think that's a really important thing, and that's why I think, even though I suspect that Dean will dismally lose the no-confidence vote tomorrow, I think they should still move it. I still think they should put a line in the sand and they should say what they stand for. And if you look at the election result, 65% of the community voted for the major parties, and both major parties said we support the salmon industry, we support the timber industry, and we support the greyhound industry. Right? So it's 2/3 of the Tasmanian community have supported those industries, yet one party has decided to sell out those industries in order to maintain office and appease the 35%, the remaining 35%, who didn't vote for the major parties. And I just think if Dean stands up and makes a point, yes, he'll lose, yes, it'll be humiliating for him, but he makes the point, and just like the Liberals with 2010, he makes the point that you can actually believe what the Labor Party say. He builds the credibility of the party, and I think that's a really important thing for him to do, and it's a really important signal to send. And while that will be very difficult to do, it's going to be a difficult parliament. The reality is he wants to sit there and he wants to say to those on the crossbench, all right, you prove that you're supporting a Liberal Green government, because that's what you're doing, and I think he should do it.
Yeah, I wouldn't have committed to the no confidence motion when Dean Winter did, because I knew there would be a visceral reaction from the public. Oh, what, another one? Because over the last few weeks, no confidence motions have become dirty words. But I agree with you, Beach. Now he's put it out there. He should follow through on it. Good. Draw a line in the sand. You know, if someone might abstain from the vote, and that'll be judged if they do. But I agree. Let's draw a line in the sand here. And secondly, Sam, I think we might have come up with the name for today's podcast. Labor had Ruth, but the Libs were ruthless.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
Very good. All right. Well, listen, I think I let the cat out of the bag as to where I think the vote's going to go tomorrow, but let's have a few predictions. Killer, what do you think?
Hang on, we're talking numbers here,
numbers.
Aren't
we
not
are.
Just our
Well, first of all, do we all agree it'll go ahead?
Bring it on me. I'm always terrified about making predictions in the current political environment. You know, if you'd asked me last week how the salmon industry was looking, I would have had them unbackable favourites for policy wins.
Absolutely strong. Yeah.
Look, I don't think we know for sure whether the motion's going to be moved. We've got a one-day sitting of Parliament. Everyone's expecting it. The Governor's more or less demanded that the government test its confidence, but the absence of a motion is in itself a test of confidence.
Well, it is, yes.
If nobody moves one, the government sails
Also,
merrily on.
I haven't checked. Have they got an address and reply to deliver, or
I haven't actually
do
seen
they stand
that,
up in any motions
That's it.
and then sit down and go home, or what's
there we go. A little
check.
fizz.
Yeah.
I think it's a very, very quick and dirty day of sittings. I think we elect a speaker, and then has anyone got anything?
Come to that.
Anything else?
Anything else they want to talk about? So look,
All right. So,
I couldn't predict whether the motion's going to go ahead. If it does go ahead, my suspicion is that it will fail. To bring down the Liberal government. That would, on the numbers, I haven't heard. Carlo DeFalco, I think, said fairly early on, ruled himself out backing the government. So I think at the moment it would be 11 votes on that basis in favour.
the 11th vote being
Carlo.
Would be Carlo.
Carlo. Okay.
Not necessarily. I mean,
Based on what he said, I could never back the Liberal government after what they did to the greyhound industry. I'm saying 11 would at this stage, based on what we think we know.
Okay.
11 would be the most.
AJ.
just on the Carlo DeFalco thing, maybe he'll say that, not voting for the no confidence motion is a step before giving confidence to the government. I mean, we saw David O'Byrne commit to signing another supply and confidence arrangement with Jeremy Rockliff. Maybe Carlo DeFalco will stop short of that, or he might support the motion. I don't know that for a fact.
All right, come on, AJ, give us your...
I think it's. I don't think it'll get any other support outside Labor, but I think it's worthwhile doing because it'll be good to hear from the crossbench as to what they think about the events of the last few days.
Yep.
And it would probably be, I know this is more of a curiosity thing, it'd be interesting to hear them say why they didn't back Labor in.
Okay. Yeah,
and keeping in mind that this Parliament can move a no confidence motion in 6 months or a year or
100%,
18 months. We can go through this same thing. For the same reasons, any time during the term of this Parliament. So.
Okay, so that's 11-24, I think, for Dave. It's 25-10 for AJ. Brad?
Yeah, it'll be 25-10. I think Labor will move it. They should move it. It is the first day of the next election campaign, in a sense.
And they should set the
just
tone.
the same as
That's
we
correct.
moved it in 2010. Even though we knew we were going to lose, we still moved it because that's the point you start making your arguments about broken promises, trust, all that sort of stuff. So it'll go down. And Carlo, as I understand it, he's back in the Liberal tent. That media release was straight out of New South Wales head office, and I understand didn't necessarily reflect his views.
All right, well, yes, just for the record, I think it will be 25-10. Anyhow, they don't get to vote tomorrow.
Here we go.
But let's see what the punters think from our good friends and show sponsors, Enterprise Market and Research Servicing. So
He's got his own highlighted
I've got
copy.
a media release here, and so Voters, and I'll read it to you, voters have expressed support for the continuation of the Jeremy Rockliff Liberal government with almost a majority of votes, 49% to 35%, opposing tomorrow's proposed no-confidence motion, according to an exclusive survey by Enterprise Market and Research Services. When the undecideds are removed, the margin blows out to 59% versus 41%.
Well, I think that reflects
So
the real-
closer than we think the vote will be in Parliament.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. So there you go. So that's what the
Yeah,
punters
look, no real surprises there. I mean, I think that reflects basically the past 2 weeks of the post-campaign campaign. That's really what it does reflect, where we're saying momentum has gone. What's really interesting, Beach, I did have, and I've seen the release, it is.
Yep.
I did have, the question's pretty much the same as the one EMRS asked a couple weeks ago. That question was about who should form government. This is what's your view of the no confidence. So pretty much the same question. So the margin has changed by 5 points in the Libs' favour in that 2 week period, which is statistically significant outside the margin of error. And the other thing is, I had a look in the crosstabs. The move, almost exclusively, the move is in Green voters.
Yeah.
So Green voters 2 weeks ago were saying 90% back to Libs, 90% back Labor, 10% back to Libs. They're now saying 73% back Labor, 27% back to Libs. That's a 17-point movement in Green voters, and that was before yesterday's Salmon announcement.
So you'd expect that to be more.
So, you know,
17% more support a Liberal Green government.
Well, I mean, there's still a majority of Green voters clearly want their members to back Labor tomorrow, but I think that movement in the Green voters obviously tells you the success of what the Liberals have done over the last 10 days in terms of moving voter sentiment.
All right. Well, we'll move on to the next bit, which I think gives me heart that in Tasmania we love our politics.
Why is that, Beach?
Okay, because EMRS went out further and asked who do they think would be a better treasurer. Okay.
What were the options?
And the options were...
Don't tell us the answers yet.
Okay, they were Guy Barnett, Josh Willey, Erica Betts, and Ruth Forrest.
Okay.
Okay, how do we think it went?
Oh,
All right.
Michael Aird.
Well,
Left him off.
We left Eddie off the list. I saw him at Hill Street only on the weekend. He was looking good. Okay, so Josh Willey, 10%. Okay. Guy Barnett, freshly boned, I think we've said. 15%.
Oh, okay. So Guy, even though he's been sacked, still beat Josh.
Erica Betts, 25%. Which I would have thought it would have been stronger than that. And Ruth Forrest, 40%. There you go.
She is a qualified midwife, so the best person to do the job, as Sol Eslake has told us.
Sol Eslake reckons she'd be
there
good.
you go, 40%, that's a very strong number.
That is a very impressive number.
I do feel a little sorry for Ruth, though, because she ain't ever going to get to do that job. And
will she be the shadow treasurer?
Well, the shadow. She's going to pretend to be an independent again.
Yeah.
So I feel like she might have jumped a bit early.
That's a moot point, I think. Yeah.
I don't know. I think she'll still be a fierce critic. I mean,
I think
it was
Ruth-
an opportunity to have a fresh look at the budget, and I think that poll result, and I also think Labor was motivated by, it wasn't necessarily Ruth Forrest, it was a message to the Parliament that we can't keep doing what we're doing. And I think the party system is a big problem when it comes to the budget because of how much they promise at elections, whether it's Liberal or Labor.
Well,
you get to an election...
How much they promise after an election.
Well, yeah, that's true, you know.
Let's be clear.
But you get to an election and you get drunk on promising money for everyone. So
There's-
Ruth Forrest, who has a 6-year term and a very comfortable margin, doesn't have
Just
that
imagine
problem.
that. She could have been the treasurer that's raised taxes on everybody. There's an election called, and she wouldn't have been up for election. Just imagine that.
Yeah. Look,
But is that a bad thing?
Yeah.
It is
perfectly
ridiculous. There's
situated.
no accountability.
And I think that result also shows that her willingness to serve in that position hasn't cost her any of the respect that she enjoys.
well, this is...
I mean, I again, a history lesson, boys and girls, but 2010, I remember there was a brief period when a bloke called recently freshly minted independent called Mike Gaffney put his hand up and said, pick me, Labor, I'll come and be in your cabinet after the 2010 election. From that point on, card marked, basically Labor stooge. And I think
he ran for the Labor Party in 2002.
Yeah,
I was in his bloody ad, Brad. Of course he was a Labor person.
But my point is, his card's then marked. You can't pretend to be independent after that point. And Ruth's going to have the same problem now, I think. Her card is now marked.
Whatever happened to
Still
him?
got elected comfortably, though.
Still there.
That didn't hurt him.
What's he do? Haven't heard of him? Seen him lately?
Hey,
He got monumental dying with dignity
right to
legislation
die
through.
legislation.
Right.
5 years ago.
Okay. Well.
Oh,
okay.
Brad.
Well, Can I say?
I'm a Gaffney's fan, as you can tell.
clearly.
Listen, us Latrobe boys, stick together.
That's it. All right. Well, all I can say is Ruth has been round
Do
for
you reckon
many.
Jeremy Rockliff would swim the Mersey naked if he had to stay in government? I reckon he would. He would.
Yeah, well, I think he's proven he'd do just about anything.
Right. I think.
In joke, sorry, Pete.
Yeah. No, that's all right. I think Ruth is a very credible independent politician, and I think she will survive this. I think she will survive as a commentator, and she will continue to be a commentator. But you're right; she has sort of marked a card to a certain degree. But fundamentally, Ruth was asked to do it because she's built some credibility in this space.
Hang on, Brad's point about you hand down the budget but then not go to election, wasn't Tasmania's arguably most successful treasurer of the last 50 years David Crean in the upper house?
No, well, I would say the best treasurer of the last 50 years was Peter Gutman.
Yeah.
Oh, well, but David Crean was in the upper house, wasn't
Was
he?
a successful.
Can you confirm that?
He was before my time.
Okay,
Yeah.
there you go.
Crean was a successful treasurer. Anyhow.
From the
right.
upper house, though. We can confirm that?
Yes, he was from the upper house. Yes, David Crean was in the upper house.
But at
good.
least
That's
he was
correct.
also in the party that did
Yes,
it.
and he was in the party all the way through.
Always.
The problem
okay.
I suppose my point is the problem he would have had with that, Ruth would have able to continue to be all care,
No
responsibility, and
no.
that's anathema to democracy.
Yeah, and all care, no responsibility from the point of view of not being a member of the party as well.
Well, I think there would have been friction
think-
between her and Dean, but sadly, it's all hypothetical
It is,
now, I
sadly,
imagine, isn't it?
Well,
Yeah.
at this stage. Anyhow, we also got EMRS to survey preferred budget repair measures. And so here's some interesting...
Just give
here's
us
some
the numbers,
interesting thoughts.
Pete, yeah.
I will, yes. Hiring freeze and efficiencies, 61% support.
Oh, who couldn't support that?
Yep, that's exactly right. Abandoning the Mac Point Stadium, which is the only thing that's remained standing out of this whole bloody process, 56%.
56% of voters support abandoning Mac Point Stadium
That's
as a
correct.
budget savings measure.
Versus 33% who oppose it. All right. Increasing taxes, which seems to be something that a lot of people want to do, 28%. 54% of the community, that's the majority of the community, oppose it.
Look, I always say when it comes to increasing taxes, the people that propose it should first of all pay that first bit of tax themselves. They should cast the first stone, if you like. I hear the AMA talking about we need to increase taxes.
Yeah.
But please keep us exempt from payroll tax.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
yeah. It's just...
no one wants to increase taxes.
No,
on
that's
themselves,
exactly right. Right.
Well, Saul Estlake, he had put forward a couple of things that I think would have affected him personally.
What were they?
A luxury car tax. I don't reckon he's driving a 1983 Mitsubishi Colt, is he?
You've got to buy a new car to pay that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought that was a good one.
Right. Cutting government services, 22%.
Yeah.
And privatising government assets, 14%.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So hiring freeze and efficiencies in the public service, very well supported,
Yep.
but don't touch our assets.
Yes.
And I reckon that was why it was a strange thing for the Liberals to put on the table, because
Insurance.
they added to it.
Still
then.
waiting.
No, I mean,
still waiting to get a quote from my house. I'm looking forward to that.
I mean when that jacket doesn't fit, by the way. I've tried to squeeze into it. But, I thought when they put privatisation on the agenda, I was like, how will this go? And then Tasmanians don't like it, do they? They really don't like privatisation.
No, they don't like. And I remember, and I was reminding Brad of this a while ago, I was around when Tony Rundle proposed selling the hydro, and Jim ran the campaign, hands off the hydro, and Tony ran...
It was long-term leases, I believe, not a sale. But
okay,
yeah.
well... Tony ran a series of community meetings all throughout Tassie, and the feedback from those community meetings was not don't sell the hydro, it was don't sell the hydro because, well, we don't have a problem with that. We don't trust what you'll do with the money. So it was like, don't sell the family farm because we think you'll squander the cash, not we don't have a problem with the family farm.
Well, I think the thing with these numbers, and the big sleeper sitting there in the middle of those numbers we talked about is the stadium. It's the one thing which somehow or rather avoided the Jeremy Rockliff, everything must go fire sale over the past 10 days.
Yep.
But when you ask the punters, it's still
the biggest,
by far and away, the
biggest stinking pile of on the face of the planet.
It's a lot easier way to save a couple of $1 billion than, shaving public service.
Well, that's the irony, isn't
public
it?
Service numbers, or getting the health department to stop spending $300 million a year more than it's got.
Or $750 million a year.
You make it sound so easy, but it is attached to Tasmania's AFL team, which is very, very popular. So it's a conundrum that Labor has grappled with for the last 2 elections, and the Liberals are faced with, and everyone in the Parliament, the upper house is faced with, okay, the stadium might not be very popular, but the team is. And now I'm unemployed, I guess I can say this. If the stadium doesn't go ahead, I know you guys don't love it, but it has got so many people invested in Tasmanian politics for the first time. If the stadium doesn't go ahead, and look, I think it's going to be a logistical nightmare to build, but if it doesn't go ahead, people will be despondent.
Right.
And you talk about a blow to business confidence that the Salmon announcement asked. Well, I reckon the stadium doesn't go ahead. Young families think, well,
okay.
Can we get anything done in Tasmania?
A couple of points before I let Becher Felicia. I can see he's just winding up. Firstly, I heard you on another podcast on the weekend, Alex. Was it Flash or what's that called?
Oh, yeah. Fridays with Flash, yeah.
Yep, and I thought you made some really good points about that, but also that it is such. That's the biggest pushback from people, is that cost in the terms of the current budget problem
Massively.
that we've got. And
no, I'm not arguing with that.
I suppose these numbers demonstrate that's not going to go away. Yep. That conversation is going to keep on happening. I suppose that's my first point. My second point is, and maybe you're going to make this speech, why is it that greyhound industry and established industry is dispensable, for want of a better term? Why is it that the salmon industry is dispensable politically, but an AFL team and a stadium, which we don't yet have, has been an untouchable over this whole period?
And people certainly would be despondent about a decision to cancel the stadium. But, I think that those figures show that 56% of the population wouldn't be too despondent. It's something they're willing to do. The argument that no stadium, no team has been well and truly made, 56% of people knowing that would be quite happy with that outcome.
I think 56% of the community understand we can't afford it, right? And at a time when we're shutting down industries, right, which we're doing, okay, and we're not generating the revenue, and we're having and we've got a runaway train in terms of budget expenditure, the only bloody bit out of this we keep is the bit that we all have to pay for as taxpayers, which is the stadium. We don't keep the industries that generate the jobs. All this discussion with the crossbench is all about industries and jobs, the future, the economic growth of this state. So, look, we can have a lovely big stadium down there at Mac Point, fantastic, great, but we are going to have so much debt and we're not going to have the jobs and the growth. And the point I was making before about health, education, cost of living and transport is these are the things that young Tasmanians look to in order to have a bright future and a career. If they're not there, if we can't provide those things for young people, they will move away. We've seen it before, we'll see it again, regardless of whether we've got an AFL team or a stadium. That's my point.
I'm not arguing with the numbers. I agree. The stadium is not popular, and I think cost is the biggest reason, and also the AFL's treatment of the state. Yeah. People are uncomfortable with that. But there is a portion, and it could be these 33% that totally oppose it. You'll notice that that is higher in the totally oppose. The undecided category in that stadium column is a lot less than the other 4 questions, and that's because people have largely made up their mind.
It's a polarising issue. There's no doubt about it.
And the ones that want it, they really want it, and they see this beach as a giant litmus test of, are we going to get things done? And if the stadium fails and the team therefore fails, it will be a body blow to confidence, because people... No, hang on. People love... For these people, I'm not talking about the whole state. I'm talking about you've said yourself you're not a massive footy fan, right? No. I'm involved in
Irish footy.
Much more in footy. I'm in that group. 24,000 people. They are one-eyed. Yes. They are passionate.
That's fantastic.
This is all they've been thinking about for months and months. This is the one political issue that's got them out to vote. Look at the Liberal vote. It went up despite all their problems. And I think that's because people backed them in on the stadium.
In the meantime, we shit-can a $1.3 billion
I'm not
industry
saying
employing 5,000
I'm not saying it's either or. I'm just saying don't...
It is. That's what it's come down to. It's come down to either or.
I'm not arguing that.
You're going to have to get rid of 3,600 public servants and cut services and... increase taxes. Those things are going to happen. They're also wildly unpopular.
AJ,
your gripe is with the government. I'm just saying there is a solid portion of the population that cares deeply about the stadium. Deeply about it.
Absolutely. And they're passionate about it. And I certainly understand that. I don't have a problem with people being passionate about the stadium. I'm just saying at what price does the stadium come?
All right. Well, we should say... and those numbers on the stadium are basically the same as every poll has said for the last 18 months in terms of support and opposition. So no real surprise, but it's not going away as an issue whenever we've got a budget crisis, for want of a better term, I think is my point.
Yes. Okay. All right. We've just got one more thing before we sign off. I know Brad's been holding this since the start of the show, and it's a famous... Is this a Fontcast exclusive?
Fontcast exclusive, yes.
Okay. I don't know whether, gents, you had a look for it in the script, but here it comes, Brad.
So I can exclusively reveal again on the Fontcast so that Jackie Petrusma, former health minister, very good health minister, I think, actually, Beach, wasn't she?
She was. She was a good one, actually.
Has made a miraculous recovery from her serious hamstring injury. And will be able to hobble down the parliamentary aisle.
Will she be escorted down?
Carried down maybe, the parliamentary aisle tomorrow, not only as the Liberal nomination for Speaker, but my understanding is she will be elected as Speaker of the House of Representatives tomorrow. As always, you heard it here first on the Fontcast.
There you go.
You're being a little facetious. Isn't the Speaker the ideal job for someone recovering from a soft tissue injury? You do a lot of sitting.
I think you're missing the point of my great revelation there, Alex.
No, well, that's a great scoop, Jackie Petrusma. But you're sort of saying that the hamstring injury is recovered miraculously.
I'm suggesting that perhaps it was, a
bit of a
convenient excuse to not be a minister with something else lined up instead.
Such as the speakership.
Sorry, you go.
It's a great strategic move. Leaves the Liberals with 13 votes on the floor of the House.
It does, but I think the Libs, and obviously it also means others are going to vote for Jackie to get her up. But I think the Libs probably learnt from last time that it's better to have control of the House, even if you nominally vote less, because you have control of the House.
And I think if tomorrow goes the way we think it will, it's not going to be a knife's edge vote, is it?
No.
At least for a little while.
There'll be others that will be. Yeah.
Now, one question without notice. If it does go the way we predicted, 225-10, and Dean doesn't get to become the Premier, should he stay on as opposition leader? My answer to that is yes.
My answer is absolutely yes.
And
that's why he should move to no confidence. He should stand up, he should stand his ground and start building for the next election.
I am super critical of the no confidence motion he moved. I've said that to him. I thought it was a huge tactical error. I don't think he consulted even a tiny bit widely enough before he did something so monumental. I think he misjudged Jeremy Rockliff. That aside, I think he was a good opposition leader. Look at the spirits. And I don't think there's someone who would be able to prosecute the case at the moment as well as he can. Now, look, he's got a lot of work to do to win back the trust of the public. It'll take multiple mea culpas and a fair bit of self-deprecation, I reckon. But I think if he loses the vote tomorrow, he should stay on. Brad?
Well, he should stay on. Will his colleagues let him, I think, is another question. Again, another history lesson. But, after 2010, Will stayed on. There was a brief abortive attempt from...
Was there?
There was. The then... and future Treasurer to to take that job, but it
Wow,
it
gee, that's a Politas exclusive.
didn't-
Fontcast
no, that was
exclusive.
yeah,
didn't
no,
get
I seem to-
more than a conversation in the party room before that was
I
kiboshed.
seem to recall that. It was fairly early.
Oh, sorry, you were talking about Peter Gutman though.
Yeah,
'cause
we are.
It was,
Yeah, yeah.
God,
Yeah, no,
Barnett was
but
a
it was
future
very
treasurer.
early in his career, wasn't
Peter
it?
Gutman. So after the 2010 election, Peter made an abortive attempt to take the leadership from Will. It failed, as was the right thing, as it should have. And Will then stayed on, obviously, and benefited from the things that happened in the 2010 campaign. So yes, he should stay on. Willie, that's another question. Willie, see
or
what I
can
did
he?
there?
Yes, yes.
But
you
I think
did.
I think I said a few episodes ago that anyone in the Labor Party that had any involvement in the decision to back in the stadium 100% should never become the leader of the Labor Party. So
Yeah.
he's looking.
You're
at you,
hinting at
Josh.
someone.
He's looking at you, Josh.
Right, okay.
Okay, now, Killer, you got any views?
Look,
on
I don't have an opinion. I would have thought, after the election, after sparking an early election with a no confidence motion, after not recording a particularly good result, and if losing tomorrow, that would put Dean Winter's leadership in a slightly more tenuous position. My understanding is that after conceding an election defeat, Labor automatically spills leadership positions. So what happens from there is anyone's guess. Dean's a member of the right faction of the Labor Party. They are not on the ascendancy in Tasmania, so it's always a difficult issue with the numbers. But I just don't know.
Could be a contested ballot.
Well, I'm not hearing any rumblings to suggest it is, for what it's worth at this particular point. So, anyhow, we'll have to watch this space.
We might be being premature. I mean, it's...
You could be
what
Premier.
is time? It's 9. Yeah, exactly. It's 9:15. There's a lot of hours left in Monday to go for that ride up.
I think that
You need a tandem bike or one of those ones with like
All right.
like
a
the
cart
A little
behind.
peloton.
The Fontcast tote board of truth does not
has-
lie. I
yes.
think, in fact, you can take that 14 on winter and put it out to about 100 AJ, and
Yeah.
I don't think it'll change.
Okay, all right, it's time. The NOCO Grand Final kicks off tomorrow from 10 a.m. Let's hope Parliamentary Services has used the 10 weeks between the last no confidence motion and this one to upgrade their live feed.
It looks like you can watch it on YouTube now.
Brilliant.
Someone posted
okay.
as well. There's a
Fantastic.
backup on YouTube.
I've got a bit of
There you go,
bandwidth.
the backup plan.
Right next to the Fontcast on YouTube.
Yes, that's correct. Fontcast is brought to you by Enterprise Marketing and Research Services, Tasmania's leading service provider. Thank you, David.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you. And thank you, Alex.
My pleasure.
Don't forget, as Brad was mentioning a moment ago, you can now catch us on the YouTube channel Fontcast. And thank you to my partner in crime, Brad.
Oh,
Thank you.
thanks for having me, Beach.
Yeah, my pleasure. Fontcast is produced and directed by Sam Eichen from Eichen Media. Until next time, carry on.